Good evening, folks. We're just going to give people a few minutes to log in. I will give it one more minute. We'll wait till 7:02. Maybe 7:03. Let's give it till 7:03. Okay, one more minute and we'll start. Okay, I guess we'll get going and hopefully more people will join us. So good evening, everybody. Welcome to the February Parent Talk at Vancouver College. My name is Michelle Petrusevich, and there's somebody else who's just trying to get in. And I am the co-host with Anna Hostafi. We're your Parent Talk chairs. And today we are super, super lucky to have JQ as our speaker who will talk about AI and our children's education. As all things Vancouver College, we will start with the prayer and the land acknowledgement. So Sasha Janusov here from grade 8 will do the honors for the prayer. Go ahead, Sasha.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Lord God, we thank you for the gift of our lives and for this day. We offer you our hearts and minds, asking for your guidance as we seek to live our lives according to your will. Fill us with your peace, wisdom, and love as we encounter the challenges and blessings of this day. Grant us the strength to serve one another with kindness, the courage to stand for what is right, and the humility to learn and grow. May our actions reflect your goodness, and may we be always mindful of your presence in our lives. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Blessed Edmund Rice, pray for us. Live Jesus in our hearts
forever.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Thank you, Sasha. Good job. And the land acknowledgement.
We'd like to acknowledge the traditional territory of the Musqueam Nation and extend our appreciation for this opportunity to live, learn, and play on this beautiful territory. Acknowledging this territory shows recognition of and respect for the indigenous people who live and have lived on this land. Recognition and respect are essential elements of establishing healthy, reciprocal relationships. These relationships are key to reconciliation, a process to which Vancouver College is committed.
Thank you. Okay, great. So just a bit of housekeeping. So we are scheduled to go till 8. The chat is actually enabled. Jay had asked that this will be an interactive session. So feel free to put your questions. We also had a couple of questions that people submitted ahead of time. The session is recorded, which will be then available for folks to watch after. And hi, Angie, I just saw you join. And what else? And just I'll do a quick intro for Jay. So we're actually really lucky to have him. He's a very well-known keynote speaker, and he's just doing it out of the willingness of his heart. And because I twisted his arm, as we both belong to project management institute, and so he's agreed to speak to us. He's a well-known expert on AI, and we thought it was a very relevant topic. So with that, I will unmute. I will mute and turn off my video, and over to you, Jay. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Michelle. Yeah, I really glad to be here. Whatever, state you're in, whether you're cooking in the background, whether you just pick the kids up and drop them off, wherever you are, I'm just thank you for joining us tonight. It's such a pleasure to be here because this topic is one that I have not wrestled with at the forefront. And one of the reasons why is I deal a lot with artificial intelligence. But my kids are a little younger than yours. My kids are a little younger. So in the top left is my daughter Madison. She's almost 3 now. That was taken when she was 6 months old. But we've got a 2-month-old Chloe at
Can
home.
you check my meter now?
And it's wild, right? You think about all of the different changes that have happened. I can't help but think about the question, how do we prepare our children for an AI-driven future? As I reflect on just different changes over the past 30, 40 years, they're everywhere, right? Whether it's changes in technology. I grew up here in BC, in Langley, so the top middle picture there is a brief intro, is my wife Teresa on our lawn tractor, my lawn tractor. That's changed a lot in terms of automated lawn tractors just driving themselves nowadays. I think about changes that we shift in when I got married. So in the top right, Teresa and I have been married about 15 years now. I think about the changes that I don't know why I threw the picture with Katy Perry in. It doesn't really have anything to do with anything. Changes we meet when we meet celebrities, changes we meet when we face adversity in running. So I'm a runner. And then changes with even learning how to parent puppies, so Brooklyn is my Shiba Inu. And actually he's here, if I may. That's a beautiful picture there. But we also have this guy right here. So I've got him joining tonight. One of the reasons why he's like, why'd you pick me up from sleeping? One of the reasons why I bring up all of these changes is because as we think about artificial intelligence, I think it's important for us to think about how that changes how we view things, particularly education. And as parents, what's our role? You sent over a few questions in advance. Things like, are you in favor of AI? How do I think AI will be integrated into classrooms as a learning resource? Do I think I should? Why or why not? How can we balance AI as a learning tool while ensuring our children develop critical thinking, creativity, emotional intelligence? These are meaty questions. And if you have other questions throughout, feel free to just drop it in the chat. But before I may ask you the main question, I want to get a sense of the room, right? There's 11 of us, so it's pretty intimate. In the chat, go ahead and throw in how much do you personally use artificial intelligence in your life, in your work? Is that once a week? Not at all? Are some of you asking What's AI, right? Like, how do I still embed it? What would you say? Go ahead and throw it in the chat, and we'll see if we can get a few answers here. Julie says not at all. Michelle's pretty regularly tapping into it. Okay. And if you think about it, what about your kids? So when we think about our kids, right, how often are they using artificial intelligence? Uh, Anita, thank you for the direct message. Not at all. You're saying you actually try hard not to use it. Melina's saying not really at all. Thank you for this. So it's fascinating, right? Um, if we're not using it that much, how does that differ with our kids? Any thoughts there? Go ahead and throw that in the chat. Are a lot of your kids using it for homework? In preparation for this session, I had a half an hour sit down during Chinese New Year dinner with my nephew, Avery. He's in high school, and I was like, "Well, what are you using it for?" And oftentimes, it actually still feels a little surface level. He says, "Hey, I use ChatGPT to help write projects, edit grammar." Julie is saying that she uses or her kid uses it for to develop images for projects, right? But where is it going? I think almost hasn't been discovered yet. And here's what I'm hoping to do tonight. Thank you, Melina. She's talking about how her daughter uses it to write emails to teachers. Where we're headed over the next bit, the next hour or so is number one, I would love to talk about the landscape. How is AI changing the status quo of work in general? Now, number two, what's the opportunity, right? What's our opportunity, particularly in the skills that our children need? And then number three, our invitation. What is the invitation that we have as parents to nurture, shepherd, enable, you name it? Let's dig in. Number one, the landscape. How has AI changed the status quo? Well, industries and functions are being disrupted. Junior knowledge workers, coordinators. I'll be honest. So as context, yes, Michelle, shared that I'm a keynote speaker. I speak about 50% of my time. The other 50% of my time, I run a consulting firm here in BC. And what I found over the past year of using artificial intelligence is a lot of the stuff that I would have relied on in the past that I would have paid someone $20 to $30 an hour for, even $35 an hour for, I don't necessarily need them anymore. I can run through 10, I kid you not, last week I had a large project. I do a lot of work with provincial ministries here, and we had a large project that's in flight, but it peaks up at the end of January and early February. And I had a lot of work that I had to wrestle with. I was able to analyze 10,000 rows of data in about the span of 3 hours, whereas it would have taken me actually 2 weeks. We had created a 2 week buffer. And yet now I was able to not lean on an intern or an associate or a coordinator, but I was able to just run with it. So I use Claude, I use ChatGPT quite a bit. But Copilot actually is shifting the game when it comes to working with content and SharePoint documents that we have. So if junior knowledge workers, coordinators, a lot of the first jobs that our kids have as they head into university are being disrupted, what else is shifting? Number two, movies, content creation, pretty seriously. I live here I live, work, and play on the traditional and ancestral territories of the Kwikwetlam peoples. I'm here in Coquitlam, and my buddy who lives in the apartment building the same as me, he works in film, and it has never been quieter in his last 3 years. Last year was his busiest year, and yet as platforms like Sora, as platforms like Runway start to hit the road, what's fascinating is that people are going to be needed just a little bit less there. Very locally, Lionsgate Films has just partnered with Runway about 4 months ago to now create the first artificial intelligence driven movie. All of the images that you just saw, AI generated. But it's not just movies, right? That would be when we think about generative video, generative AI, generative photos. All of those are, we know that we can generate pictures. We've known that for a while now. It's actually gone a little bit farther. You see, the third industry, that the function that's being disrupted is not necessarily just junior knowledge workers. It's actually also engineering, architecture. Now you can use I don't know if there are any engineers in the room. Now you can use AutoCAD, AI, AtomCAD to generate designs. And some of the design shops that I've worked with in Vancouver are actually seeing a lot of downward pressure now. You see, as the cost for offshoring decreases, as the cost for AI decreases on the design side, what we're finding is maybe I don't need as many people as I did before. You see, now with AtomCAD, what I can start to do is I can just plug in, hey, I'd like to design an Allen key screwdriver. And within seconds, we're able to do that. And maybe I say to myself, well, you know what, that screwdriver is okay. I'd really like to make the handle a little bit more ergonomic. And so it can start to render all of that as well. So if we have everything from junior knowledge workers to movies to engineering being disrupted, that's actually not all. When it comes to education, one of the things I think is most beautiful about artificial intelligence, and it answers one of the questions that was asked, is am I in favor? 100% from a tutor point of view. You see, with Khan Academy launching Khanmigo, with ChatGPT, some of the features now are absolutely mind-blowing. This is about 6 months old now, but take a look.
Hey, my friend and I are learning Spanish, and we're wondering if you could tell us the names of these objects in Spanish.
Hola, por supuesto.
Cool. What are these objects in Spanish?
The objects you're showing are una manzana and un plátano in Spanish. Nice fruit choice.
Cool. What about these?
Those are dos polígrafos or dos plumas in Spanish. One is red.
Nice.
Yeah.
What about this?
That adorable stuffed animal is un oso de peluche in Spanish. Looks like it's ready for some hugs.
It's wild. Even though it launched about almost a year ago now, our high schoolers now can access tailored tutors based on their understanding, based on their neurodiversity, based on how they prefer to learn, and to get live coaching in accessible language is now available for $29 a month. And if that's the case, there's this question that starts to loom of, well, that's amazing. That'll help my kid do better at school. But what else? You see, the last one I'll share with you, and then we'll shift gears a little bit. The last industry and function that's being disrupted. I know a lot of university grads and kids around the 18 to 23-year-old range, they sometimes head into customer success as their first role. And what we've noticed is level one, customer experience, customer success, has now been automated by generative chatbots. You see, when I pull out my phone and I download Uber Eats, if something happens with my Uber Eats order and it's incorrect, and I say, hey, I need a refund or whatever it is, it's not a real person communicating with me anymore. It's actually an algorithm that, based on policy, can make decisions about whether or not to issue me the refund or to politely decline and tell me, no, sorry, it's out of our policy. But if level one chatbot customer experience has been, replaced by AI, where does that leave our kids? And I promise it's not all doom and gloom. I usually start this way and then we shift into the kid stuff. But that's led, some of you might have seen this, but about a year and a half ago, we've seen a rise in the generation tool belt. You see construction, trades, HVAC, vehicle maintenance. Enrollment's been increasing. And I was talking to Avery. I was like, hey, what are you going to do after you graduate? He said, well, it looks like everyone's going into trades. You see, with the rise of Generation Tool Belt, a lot of people are moving into what's not replaceable. One of my clients is Jobber. They're based in Toronto. They're a platform that does business management for trades. And it's wild because they surveyed a ton of people and they found that blue collar jobs actually offer, the perception is that they offer better job security than white collar ones. And so as you look at all the numbers, it's like, okay, well, what, maybe your kid could head down that path, or what would it look like on the other side as well? Especially as pay starts to increase, right, for trades. These are all good signals of what might come. There are limitations, right? As I think about agentic AI and generative AI, the first one, of course, being still hallucinations. As I talk to Claude and I work with it, I often still find that the sources, the data, where the stats and surveys come from, sometimes it just makes it up. But another limitation is the lack of judgment or ethics, right? So because the algorithm isn't judging, it's just simply generating and responding to coaching. Um, that's a bit of a limitation, right? In terms of where it can go or where the insight is that it needs to drive towards. And then last but not least here, this notion that really still, although we're moving towards what will be AI powered organizations that are fully AI, there's still an element that it requires human oversight. So as we think about the landscape, here's my take. Number one, AI will be integrated into every job. Number two, we actually have a lot of career paths that are emerging daily. And then number three, our children should be learning to leverage AI, not compete with it. So don't go after the jobs that aren't going to be there anymore. Go after the jobs that are partnering with. And I think that sets up the tone for the second section here, which is what's our opportunity? What are the skills that our children need? By the way, at this point, I'm going to pause. If there are any questions that are starting to come up, feel free to just shoot it into the chat to everybody or to just me. Happy to consider those as we continue to go. The skills our children need. Daily experimentation. This is a good example of Galileo AI. We continue the conversation about how functions are being disrupted, but now I can create an app that is aesthetically beautiful, right? So this is Galileo creating an entirely new app just from a few prompts. And what sticks out to me is that regardless of what career implementation you're looking at or function that you're looking to play around with, our job really should be, or our job as kids should really be to play, right? The more we play, the more we know what we can or cannot do, even with tutors that may or may not help us. Now, this next video is, the demographic is a little younger. So they look like elementary kids, but the use cases actually extend all the way up to high school as well. It's just in this video, it's elementary math as context. But this was developed, Synthesis Tutor was developed by SpaceX as a bit of a innovation lab experiment. And what it did was it figured out how to gamify having a chatbot that could talk to your kid while coaching it specifically and giving it games on how to work with math. Take a look.
Tutor. We are going to learn math like you've never learned it before.
I love this idea.
Bring it on.
No textbooks, no worksheets, no homework.
I hate homework, so yeah, I'm gonna love this.
Let's work through this fraction together.
It's a fourth.
Well done.
That's so nice.
Ancient Egyptians used symbols called hieroglyphs to represent these groups of 10.
1,000. Yeah.
What's the next square number after 9?
You'll find out by doing it.
Oh, that's what it means. So cool.
Divide these 24 dots to match the division statement.
That was the 10 carried over from 13.
Now you aced it.
Great work.
That was so awesome.
I want to make sure that some tricky math never gets in the way of you accomplishing all the things you want to do in life.
Wild. And the fact that it can introduce different games that's based on what I'm dealing with at that moment, mind-blowing. The second skill that I think we need is, and this is one that I think is missing from even interns that I'm hiring today in my consulting firm, is applied critical thinking, particularly when it comes to working with artificial intelligence. You see, when I think about what I still need to coach people on, it's two things. When I think about applied critical thinking, it's one, process mapping skills, and two, opportunity identification. You see, one of our AI projects that we've launched over the past year has been a 12-month community of practice, meaning I've brought entire organizations around tinkering with artificial intelligence. And yet the gap that I think sits both at my intern level all the way into our working professional level is actually still the same. You see, some people will be able to experiment regularly and play around with, but the broad majority of organizations, and when I go through AI coaching with them, is they get a little stuck. You see, I can show you use cases that are amazing, and they might say, wow, that is fantastic. That's exactly what I need to do in my job. And where they get stuck is beyond that, right? So they can't figure out how to identify within their workflow what is the process and what is the individual piece of the process that I need to automate, delegate, is repetitive, I can lean on generative AI for, that kind of thing. And so you'll notice that there's actually a bit of a Venn diagram where process mapping skills and opportunity identification actually feed into this golden skill in the middle, which is identifying like the insights of where we can leverage AI the most. So it's applied critical thinking on how to use AI. That is the biggest gap that I see today. And this is from a change perspective of how do we help entire organizations leverage artificial intelligence? That's the same problem that our children are going to need to solve as well. The third skill that I think our kids will need is coach communication. And what I mean by that is, how do I get really good at using AI as a thought partner? Again, this is a bit of a gap or an obstacle that most people I work with, they struggle with, right? And what I mean by coach communication is, how do we guide and coach AI-driven processes? How do we articulate presentation skills? And then also, how do we start to leverage executive presence to influence people, right? Because people have spent the last 5-10 years getting so technical. I spent a lot of time with engineering firms and engineers. One of the things that I get brought into is like, can you teach us how to make presentations that are compelling? And in order for us to figure that out, you could actually just use AI for that. And so storytelling to influence and leveraging executive presence is pretty key. So the key takeaway here is humans have a communication advantage over AI, but we need to know how to direct, guide, present AI insights, and then also lead AI projects with confidence. Which leads us to our last section, which is our invitation. What can we do as parents? Well, the biggest thing is just to expose them, I want to say, to the platforms that you're using. Guide them, right, through how you would use these platforms for what they're learning. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm actually just going to show you live how I might do this with my kid if they were 17 years old. So right now, what I'm doing is I'm opening ChatGPT.
Got it. Are you trying to set up anything specific?
Yeah, I would like help with my interview prep. I'm prepping for my first job. I'm a high schooler. I'm 15 years old, and I'm really hoping to land a job at Walmart as a truck unloader.
That's exciting. Let's get you prepped. Are there any specific questions you'd like to focus on, or do you want a general overview?
Yeah, I'd like you to run me through an interview practice of maybe the single question that always gets asked from Walmart when they're looking to hire. And then if you could play the role of an interviewer and have me role play and answer that question, I'd love to get some feedback.
Sure. A common question Walmart might ask is, why do you want to work here? Let's do a practice run. I'll be the interviewer and ask you that. Ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Let's go.
Awesome. So, why do you want to work at Walmart?
Yeah, that's a great question. I really want to work at Walmart because as I think about Walmart's priorities, they're all about the cheap, low, everyday prices. And with so much going on in the economy, I really appreciate the fact that Walmart makes goods accessible for everybody. Um, yeah, that's the main reason I want to work for Walmart.
That's a solid answer. Highlighting your appreciation for their values is a good approach. You can also mention how you want to contribute to their mission. Want to try again with that in mind? That's a solid answer. Highlighting your appreciation for their values is exactly what I'd want to hear. You can also mention how you want to contribute to their mission. Want to try again with that in mind?
Yeah, that sounds great.
All right, let's give it another shot. Why do you want to work at Walmart?
I really want to work at Walmart because as I think about your values are to provide cheap, low everyday prices for consumers, which in the economy, as it ebbs and flows, it's really important to make sure that food and goods are accessible. Where I think I can contribute is, well, I'm a really hard worker and I'm not afraid to move quickly. So whatever roles there are in stocking or shelving or unloading trucks, I will be there for it.
That's fantastic. You've covered both Walmart's values and how you can contribute. You showed enthusiasm and readiness to work hard. How do you feel about that response? Fantastic.
I feel great. Okay, it's cutting me off now. So all of this to say, there are different ways you can use chat platforms like ChatGPT to get coaching on exactly the problem that they're working through, right? The number one, high schoolers need to either apply for colleges or universities or jobs, right? And so for them to just have a safe space to get feedback on it, you could even coach. By the way, I would continue this conversation for an hour with them, right? How would you rank me out of 10? What could I do? What would bring my score from an 8 to a 9, right? All of these different elements are how we show them that it's okay to play around with the platforms that we're using. I showed the example of all the videos that OpenAI and Sora are doing. As I think about generative video, that's actually one of the biggest ones that is accessible. And yet, on my LinkedIn network, of which I have over 10,000 connections, there is only one person, his name's Jeffrey Jang, he's here in Vancouver, who plays around with generative video in a way that will be disruptive. Meaning, he is a videographer, he's a creative, he knows that his job is going to be disrupted. And he has spent the last year simply trying out different models, showing what he does, and posting it on LinkedIn. He is the number, I haven't even met him in person. He is the number one person I would hire if I ever needed to do videos, even though I do them all myself. So what I mean by that is you might ask your kid, what do you want to create? And they might say, I want to create a gorilla walking through a jungle, a firefighter walking through a burning building, an MMA fighter walking into the ring. And to give them the view that whatever they think, they can create. This is a bit of a ad hoc moment. Actually, I'm going to see if I have it in here. I might not. My kid, it's somewhere here. I apologize. There's a photo that I would love to show you. So my kid's like 3 years old, by the way. Is it in here? It's not. I'll use this one as a different example. But my kid's 3 years old. Her name's Madison. She went to the Calgary Public Library back in September while I was doing a keynote. And her mom and her come back after I finish, and she says, "Hey, look, Daddy." Now this isn't the exact picture because I can't find it now. Maybe I'll send it all to you later. But it's like, look, we made a picture of you. And this is one from another conference that I had done. But it just had created on 3D printing me immediately. The picture that she had actually shown was it was a blue horse with a Disney castle in the background. And I said, hey, wow, where did you get that? Madison's 3 years old. And she says, oh, there was a computer and it asked me what I wanted. And I said, I want a blue horse with a castle. At 3 years old, Madison is realizing anything that she wants to create, she can create. And I love that. So how do we support them? Expose them to the platforms we're using. We talked about that. Number two would be to analyze AI-generated content. Meaning, in this world of fake news, how do we have them question the validity, the logic of the content? How do we, if I was to coach an AI platform, if I saw a response, how do I identify areas for improvement? I actually do this all the time now. And I would say and argue that I have the productivity of at least 3 people because I'm able to coach and have AI work for me. Number 3 is to have them develop key human skills. AI is not going to really replace public speaking. I really hope not, because I wouldn't have a job in a bit. AI can help with reading and writing, but the better I can read and I can write, the better I'm able to coach it. Does that make sense? One of my favorite places to be is the library, because growing up, I spent so many hours just digging into books. And I would actually allocate the fact that one of the reasons I'm able to create and write and tell stories nowadays is because of my love for books way back when. Because I'm able to go deep into reading and writing and realizing what good writing is, I can now identify how to coach AI just a little bit better. And then, of course, leadership. Have them go outside. One of our clients that we partner with is BC Parks, and right now they're going through park ranger and student ranger hiring. My dog is making a lot of sound, so I'm just gonna let him out so he doesn't make any more noise. And one of the key things that we're looking for as we hire all these student rangers is this view of, well, have you led a team before? What does that look like? Right before the call started, we were talking to Theo, and he mentioned how, you know, he was doing coaching. How do we give our kids the chance to just like get outside, play sports, learn through that? And I know a lot of you are already doing that, so that's nothing new. But I actually think there's a huge opportunity there for us to continue to reinforce that, which is nice, because what we're already doing, it's this notion of continue to do that. As we start to wrap up here, the best thing we can do for our kids is to teach them to think, adapt, lead, because AI will follow those who can. You see, the future of work is being rewritten right now. We just have to make sure our kids are holding the pen. Thank you. My name is JQ. If you want to stay connected, feel free to follow me on LinkedIn or Instagram. And at this point, I know we've got about 20 minutes. Feel free to come off of mute and share questions. And what I might do is I might actually go back to the first page and just see if we covered all of them. Hi, Michelle. Hi, Anna.
I wonder if, I think the, I'm not sure if people can unmute themselves, but if folks want to ask questions on the chat.
Yeah. So while you start to think about questions that you have, I feel like you have a good view of the top left one that was answered in advance. Thank you for sending that. Same with the one on the right. We haven't really touched on the question on the bottom. And while you're thinking about questions to ask, the one way I hope teachers integrated into classrooms as a learning resource, if I had an English class or a history class, is to actually partner with AI. And then the assessment that gets scored or whatever is actually, how was that conversation? How did you coach? How did you refine? Right? So that the homework or the task is actually to just tinker and to play. So that's one way I think it'll be integrated. I think with different languages, you can see how you could do that live, especially with OpenAI, to start to get coaching on having entire conversations in a different language while having ChatGPT coach you on that. So those are just a few thoughts there in terms of integration. Any other questions?
We have a quiet crowd today. Jay, I'll ask a question. Kids do use ChatGPT for homework or like other tools. Do you think is that, it's definitely different from when we went to school and, like the way, do you think that would change? Would that make them less, because I guess I know it's different, but would that make them less smart anyway? Or you know what I'm saying? Like, how would that impact, because they do ask for help. Like, yeah.
Yeah, and I think this is where like we can play an active role as parents, right? Because as they start to, if you're sitting on the sidelines and just watching AI go by, that doesn't help them, right? It actually benefits us for us to be in tune with what is happening, so that either we can protect them or enable them, right? And so the protection piece I'll touch on in a bit because that has to do with avatars and all of that. But will they become more stupid is I think what you asked. Yes and no. I think if they're using it to just simply answer the homework question, that's a little tough, right? Because then it's like, oh, I need to analyze or read this book and look for themes. Let's just take English as an example. I forget. Let's say I was reading 1984. I'm trying to put myself back in grade 10 English. And the task for the day was read chapter 3 and tell us what the themes were. Where I think there's a gap is if that's all they do, right? They say, hey, ChatGPT, what are the themes for chapter 2 and 3? And like, that's it, right? But for us to coach through that and say, hey, no, read the book by yourself, first off, which is you could do auditorily or whatever. Give me your best shot at the theme that you would provide, and then feed that into ChatGPT to see how they would agree or disagree with it. Because what you're now teaching is perspective taking, right? So a point of view on their point of view, right? Reinforcing that and adding on to give them another layer. Back when I was doing business school at Ivy, we did a lot of case studies. And the 3 levels of learning there were 1, individual case study, 2, talk about it as a group within like 3 or 4 people. And then 3, it's like live debrief plenary, right? And that really actually helps you build upon all of the themes. So you're almost getting them to this point of view of like levels 1 and 2 with AI prior to them even hitting the class. That would refine their critical thinking. Melina, I teach grade 1. Do you have suggestions for how to use AI with that age group? And she apologizes because she can only direct message. I think it's something about how we set it up. Yeah, my sister-in-law also teaches grade 1. And I think Synthesis Tutor, the one that I shared, is probably a really good start. Because what it does is it provides basic like counting games. I don't know if you saw the ones that was with a fraction, but how it works is, and I'll send maybe links out to the video later on, but it'll pick a different type of themed game based on their age group. And it'll say like, here's a single block. If I cut the block into 2, what's the fraction? And so it's live coaching you through like how you're by the way, I know they don't learn fractions in grade 1. This is just an example. But it's live coaching you through how to think through that from the kid's perspective. And because it knows that it's working with someone at the grade 6 level for fractions, for example, it'll simplify the language to their level, which is amazing. Yeah. I would also throw it into an iPad and have iPads available in the room. Yeah. And then that way, if someone did want to learn something, or if you have someone who is using English as a second language, we see this in conferences all the time now, where live transcriptions are happening Because a few years ago, I was in Richmond Secondary School doing a talk for junior achievement. And there were like 2 kids that the teacher said, hey, heads up, they don't speak English, but don't worry about it. They'll be on their phones and they're just chilling. And I was like, what? That feels a little like exclusive. How are they involved in this conversation? And they're like, oh, they're not, but they'll figure it out. Regardless of what grade you're in, Melina, I think there's actually this space where you could almost have live transcriptions be so accessible now, right? So that even if I wasn't speaking the same language, or if I'm learning French, for example, here in BC, very relevant, um, I would be able to get live captions. Because a lot of how we think we learn nowadays, I don't know if you've noticed, but like 60% of viewers who watch Netflix watch it with captions because it's actually just easier to digest. And so to enable learning at that level is pretty cool. You're welcome, Melina. Yeah, just gotta thank you. Any other thoughts or questions? And if not, happy to let you go too.
I wonder if something is up with the chat, if people can't put the, okay, well, maybe, what would be the key takeaway, Jay, as sort of from what would you want the parents to think about as they think about AI and education and, you know?
Yeah, I would throw money at different use cases. In the very same way that I'm doing it for my business, I would do it for my kids as well. Meaning, what I've seen over the past year for tech debt is my business will actually have spent a lot on different AI platforms to play around with what is good versus what is not. And I would say like each subscription, you know, $30 a month, that adds up pretty quickly. I would argue I probably am going to spend way more than that on sports, on dance class, on you name it. And so for me to instantly just be like, no, actually, like, you want to play with Claude? Sure. You want to play with ChatGPT? Sure, do it. With the disclaimer that after a month or two, if you're still not using it, we're just going to cut it. Right. But I think the rationale being, let's invest, because if they're not using it, right, they're going to be the most like AI fluent, I would actually argue, of all of us. Content creators nowadays, like my IG, most of the most commonly followed IG accounts are actually complete AI bots, right? Like the videos are just created by themselves. I use a video editing tool using Captions, which is an iPhone app, and I can create the videos that I want with voiceovers that uses my voice. I've never said any of that. So productivity will start to shoot the roof. And so that's the one takeaway, is invest in your kids. And then number two is probably just give them the space to play functionally still in whatever they're curious about without AI, right? As I think about user design, UI design, or drawing, or all the skills that make us human, that's where I would double down on. Because I wish I can do is to spend time on like playing music and blah, blah, blah. And so just bringing that out actually elevates their ability to critically think through different lenses. We got a question. We got a
Sorry,
question
was
from
there a
Manuli.
question? Yeah, so go ahead.
How do you also make children aware of problems that could arise with AI, like guarding against plagiarism, errors in response, using good prompts? That's a great question. Guarding against plagiarism, there are a few ChatGPT custom GPTs that actually run through and say, is this AI or not? So that's one way. That's such a hard question, because we're also waiting for lawsuits to land today, right? So in the past, because now everything is there are a lot of open source models. A lot of people are saying that what is being spewed out by AI is both stolen and derivative, right? It's just derivative work of someone else's work. And yet us as creators, as writers, as singers, as musicians, probably have tunes that sound very similar to other songs. And so it's tough, but to just call out the platforms that do check for AI plagiarism, especially as they're writing university things, will be interesting. I think we'll start to see a bit of a shift towards like all of us will be wrestling with what makes us unique, what makes us differentiated. And knowing that this is, a school of faith and I'm also a faith, I think there's this, reemphasis on worth, right? Like we don't get our worth from our jobs. We don't get our worth from what we do or our accomplishments, but our identity in Christ too is pretty powerful. So anyway, I actually never get religious ever in any of my speeches, so hopefully it's okay that I share this in this environment. Oh, and then the last one, not aware, but and then I'll stop rambling. Protecting. I post about my daughter. Moving forward, I'm actually really hesitant. Daughters, got it. I have 2 daughters now. I'm really hesitant actually now to post any videos of them. I'm a public figure because I'm an influencer on IG and LinkedIn and all of that. So I kind of have to have my face there. I don't know if I would with Maddie or with Chloe because it's kind of creepy. Not gonna lie. Love AI for what it is. And I don't know. Do I want to see a video of Madison saying something that she didn't or doing something that she doesn't? Probably not. So I think the protection is going to be there too as well. Okay. Soapbox, hopping off.
Yeah, that is a very legit concern for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Especially as I make my own AI twins too. I have one.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And so to just, be conscious that it's not that great yet, but it probably will be in terms of my mannerisms and what it says and how it thinks, right? Yeah. So knowing that I have my own AI twin, I'm like, I wouldn't want that for my daughter. So it's fascinating too. But me knowing how to use it also has me saying, no, we're not going to use that for you. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions, folks? If you want to put them in the chat, let's just give it a minute. If not, we'll and I'll just put the evaluation in the chat, and I'll let you do the closing.
Well, I just want to say thank you, Jay. That was very, very well put together presentation. It's very much appreciated. What you may or may not know, depending on when you signed in, this has been recorded. We hope to be able to share that with those who couldn't make it this evening. And in my own research of looking at JQ Up, he does have some fabulous videos on his YouTube channel. So I really encourage all of you to dive in because I found it very fascinating. And I thank you so much. I think it was a privilege for us to have you tonight because I know you are very well respected out there and touring the world because you have lots of information to share. So thank you. We do have, I do believe that on the latest newsletter, we got word that for those who have grade 10 and 11 students, that there will be additional meetings regarding our boys' choices of courses for the following year at VC. So keep that in mind because it's coming up, I think, in a week or two, 2 different dates, location at VC. So one is the 19th on a Wednesday, and then the week after it's another grade. So please pay attention to that when they come forward in emails. I'm sorry, Michelle, but now I've lost that screen for posting.
Oh, it's okay. I can speak to this. Folks, I've put a link to the Slido. We would very much appreciate if you could just take a minute and click on it and just answer a couple of questions. This just helps us with the planning of the future events and just knowing how we did. This gets reported up to VCPA monthly as to how we're not who showed up and stuff, but just in terms of, what the feedback was and that kind of thing, because school administration does take it seriously. So we just want to make sure that we keep on doing the good job. And we do take any feedback that is suggested to us. So we would very much appreciate the, yeah. So, oh, it's asking a login? What? That's so weird. Hang on, let me try again. copy, try again. Try now, see if that works. I tested it, it was working. And while we're testing it, let me test it again. The next talk, and that's probably the last talk of the year, will be on March 11th. And that's going to be on prepping for university applications. So it's one of the VC dads actually who is going to do that presentation. So we encourage you to participate, or, you know, for kids who are in grade 11 and 12. So, okay, it works now. I see that. Okay, great. Jay, thank you again so much. I really do appreciate having you. So we'll just give people a minute to drop off and then we can stay on the line and have a good night. I hope you found this information useful.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.
Cheers.